All right, we're going live here. Let's see, people are coming in. I can see a lot of new numbers and faces popping up here. This is insane. It's a lot of people. Wow. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our amazing webinar we have today on SEO. We're going to go technically on SEO, and we have two amazing people here with me. I'll give it like 30 seconds before we start. So maybe we can do like an icebreaker here. I was asking the guys actually, what should I ask? If it's something related to music or to, I don't know, drinks. And they're like, well, we all have young kids here, so we're not much into this. So my icebreaker question for you guys, and in the meanwhile, I want to hear where you guys joining us from. Let me know here in the chat. By the way, when you chat, you can select the option everyone, so everyone can see you, okay? Oh my God, a lot of people, Jesus, this is going insane. This is crazy. Okay, Nati, Chris, question for you guys, because you have young kids. What would be your dream, like of ability that you want your kid to learn in the next 5 years? That would be like, wow, I love my kids so much more.
For me, I think the big thing. So my daughter's just starting to learn to sing, and I'm really looking forward to it because I'm quite musical, but I'm really looking forward to her learning to. Although it's almost cuter at the moment because she kind of can't sing. So in a way, I wish that would stay as it was. But yeah, I'm looking forward to actually be able to play my guitar and sing a song with her. I think that's going to be great.
Oh man, that's amazing. I would love that. Actually, you know that statistically, your daughter has more chances of becoming a famous singer than she has of becoming a famous YouTuber. There are more YouTubers than musicians out there. So better chances for her to be the next Lady Gaga. Who knows?
Well, you know what? This chat is making me feel like a
SEO.
Twitch streamer. So,
oh yes. How about you, Nati?
So Rose, my daughter is 18 months old now, and my wish is a bit more practical. I want her to be able to walk the dog, to walk the husky. It gets so cold during night, man. She needs to step up, take a part of the load on, and I'm just waiting for her to catch up with that.
yeah, we have two dogs that do not get walked as much as they used to.
I'm in the dog stage still, so I'm still walking my dog myself. Amazing. Oh my God, I'm seeing so many people coming from a lot of places. It's incredible. Like, I mean, all over the world. We have India, we have Canada, we have US, we have a lot of countries in Europe. I'm in Europe as well myself. We have Israel. Wow, insane, guys, insane. And we beat the 1K. This is amazing. Oh my God, we have 1.1K people here. This is next level, amazing. So I will respect your time and get started because I know you guys are here to see and hear about technical SEO, not about what we're going to do with our kids and our dogs. So let me share my screen here very quickly, and we're going to get started. So I want to introduce you to these two amazing guys here, Nati and Chris. These guys are like the next level of tech SEO, and we're going to bring this conversation and make it very informal because we want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable about asking questions. Because we have this crazy chat with a lot of questions coming in. If you guys have any questions, anything you want to ask, please use the Q&A icon there. There's a Q&A box. You can click on that, throw your questions there. We have a ton of people behind the scenes here in the backstage, making sure that the questions get answered. And I'll throw some of the questions live to the guys as well. Without further ado, I want to hand the mic to you both, Chris and Nati. Welcome, and please, floor is yours.
Cool. Thanks very much. I guess if we can jump into the first slide, then Eddie. Okay, yeah. So basically, this session today is kind of designed to help, especially kind of owners of Wix sites, understand a little bit about technical SEO. We're going to cover off some of the basics and the fundamentals of technical SEO and what technical SEO is. A lot of common issues that we see. So my job at DeepCrawl is that I am a member of the professional services team. So I spend a lot of my time auditing and looking at big enterprise level sites and some smaller sites as well. So we're going to discuss common issues that we see across sites like this. And then also tips and best practices and things like that for maintaining a healthy website. Obviously, Natty is here as the Wix expert, and I'm here hopefully to talk about to bring a little bit of experience from how we see things at Deepcrawl as well. So I guess if we can skip on.
Yep.
Natty, would you like to say this?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about what the definition of technical SEO is really about, without getting into too much detail. And I do want to stress that technical SEO is an entire discipline. Don't, feel out of place if you don't understand everything right away. It's about a way of thinking, a way of looking at things, rather than remembering everything by heart and remembering code by heart. But the biggest aspect, the gist of technical SEO is about playing nice with search engines, search engines and their bots, crawlers. These are all basically that's software. And technical SEO is mainly about making a website bot friendly, taking care of all the special needs that software, that bot, that crawler has, so our website can actually rank in Google. In other ways, and in most cases, technical SEO is about getting out of the way. It's about getting out of the way and helping your content rank if it's good enough, if it satisfies user intent. It's about not holding your progress and halting it because of certain issues. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. The way I always think about it, technical SEO is making the information retrieval bit, right, of Google's life more easy. So Google, half of Google is information retrieval, is getting information out of websites. The other half is understanding what that information is and then deciding who does it best. This is very much focusing on just making sure that Google, and by extension users, can get the information that they want out of your website. So I guess if we just briefly touch on how Google crawls website. So effectively, obviously by crawl, we mean when Google visits your website, goes through it and finds as many links as it can on that website to understand as much as it can about that website and as much of what is on your website. And it does it nowadays. It does it pretty much like a user does. It uses a specialized version of Chrome called Chromium, which is designed to be more easily automated. So back in the old days, Natty, as you remember, Google used to just kind of request content, and then whatever code came back, it would try and parse that code and understand what the page was based on from that. Nowadays, it still does do that, but it will also now actually take a visible representation of your page, and it will try and use that to actually understand what a page is about as well. So kind of gone are the days of the little tricks you used to be able to do to hide things from Google or to make Google think things were there that weren't. And nowadays, yeah, as I say, you now have to treat Google a little bit like a real person.
Definitely. So I love that you mentioned that search engines and their bots is about information retrieval. So let's go over what information is. Okay, yep. What do these bots care about, right? So to make it simple, Google or the bot knows about a certain URL on the web. It doesn't matter which website, and then it goes and fetches it, right? It makes a request to that page, to that URL. The server returns what we call a response, and that response contains the headers and the HTML Google cares about. Now, basically, Google extracts, it doesn't use everything, but it extracts what they care about. So one, of course, is the status code. If we're talking about 200, 301s, 404s, 500 codes, whenever we mention that, you should know that that's the first thing. Any client, any software that fetches, even your browser, that fetches the URL, that's the first thing they see. Is this page okay to crawl? Is there an error or can I continue? So whenever a bot fetches that URL, they get the response and they also get the HTML. And the HTML, if everything is okay in the response, is the interesting bit, because Google takes two things away from that. One is the content or the main content. Now, when we're talking about content, it's not necessarily a long form post, a blog post or an article. Images are content, videos are content. Almost everything that a user sees is content, almost, right? If we take away the UI and different functionality of a website. So Google takes that, and the other thing Google does is extract all the links on a page. Why? Because that's how Google and other bots know about the other pages on a website, right? Because whenever I fetch a page, I get all the HTML. The HTML contain the links, and those links will be added to my crawling queue. Now I know about them, and then I can fetch them. So the most important part, I think that the biggest foundation of technical SEO and about being bot friendly is making sure Google can discover all the web pages, all the URLs on a website, right? And then what's the next layer, Chris? If I made sure, for example, Google does discover all the URLs on my website, first of all, what do you think I would need to pay attention to that may harm that cause, that may harm that goal, that may detract from Google's ability to figure out what's going on a website?
So I guess the main thing, and I guess actually if we jump into the next slide, potentially we can start looking at some of the main issues. The very, very first thing we'd start to look at, and I think the big thing for a lot of sites, sometimes with very enterprise sites, you can get really into weird details and really strange issues. But the biggest thing is always making sure that content is available effectively to crawlers, but also that content is wherever possible as unique as possible. So one of the first issues that we see with some websites, and this happens a lot with shop fronts and things like that, quite often, is what we call content duplication. Now, a key thing you need to get your head around with technical SEO is that Google sees the URL and what comes back from when it requests a URL as very separate things or things that aren't necessarily related. So if Google asks for 4 different URLs and gets the exact same content or almost the same content back each time, it's going to struggle to understand which URL it should put in the search results, I guess, if that makes sense. So if you have 2 or 3 pages that focus on the same product or the same destination, say, you begin to create issues there where Google doesn't understand necessarily which one is the real one, which is where canonical tags come into play. And a canonical tag is essentially, I believe, Natty, it's just a setting in Wix, which is effectively a way of saying to Google and to other search engines, the URL that lives in this tag here is the canonical version, the original, the progenitor, and these work across sites as well. So if you were to push out content to be syndicated, for instance, if you're a great blog, those blogs can specify your site within the canonical tag, which means that you will then get the credit back from Google. Natty, I know in our dry run we had a great example of duplicate content that you brought up, and I'm trying to remember what it is now.
Anything that has to do with adding parameters to your URL, basically even UTM tracking parameters or sorting parameters, everything that changes characters, adds characters, changes the URL, but serves the same content is basically a duplication. But I do have a question. Why, other than Google not being sure of what to show in search results, why is that such an issue? Is it a big issue? Does it become more of an issue for certain websites? What do you think about that?
I think for a lot of sites, duplicate content is it can be a smaller issue nowadays, or it's certainly less of an issue than it used to be. Nowadays, Google is quite good. What we used to see back in the old days, and where part of where canonical tags came from, is people used to just straight up steal content, right? they would take content from well-ranking websites, because the thinking was, oh, if such and such a website ranks really well for this keyword, then it must be their content. So they would steal their content, put it on the page. These canonical tags help issues like that. As I say, I think nowadays, unless you have millions of pages, right, Natty, or I guess a good example is, like Natty was saying, if you have fastest navigation on your site and you have, let's say, a red dresses page and a red dresses under £50 page, but all your red dresses are also under £50, you now serve that exact same piece of content across 2 different URLs, which again says to Google starts to go, well, which, I don't necessarily know which piece of what to file this under, I guess, whereas a canonical tag just helps you to say, hey, guess what, it's going here. So back at you then, Natty, detecting duplicate content. I mean, it's kind of easy for me. We have a duplicate content function in Deepcrawl, which helps me find this stuff. But I guess, is there an easy way of pulling this information out if you're not using something like a big enterprise crawler?
So there are plenty of solutions out there. First of all, any type of most crawlers will get the job done. They'll do exactly what we specified. They'll fetch the HTML, extract all the links, scroll all the links, and then you'll be able to see if you have duplication issues. Another great tool is Google Search Console, which will alert you on some instances. But another great tool is just using your keyboard, copying a piece of text and searching it inside of quotes. And then you can find out if your content is duplicated on other websites, or if it's duplicated, but there are other URLs omitted from the search results. So you can use Google Search for that. You can use external tools or the app, and you can use Google Search Console, which you should always be using. It's a tech SEO's best friend, I think. But I did notice that canonical isn't really a directive, is it? Right? When I say, hey, this is the canonical version, I'm basically giving Google another hint, right? I can't decide that for Google, because Google looks at other signals, other pages pointing to a URL, if it's being linked to, and other stuff like that. So what would you recommend when deciding on a canonical URL, on the original URL? Is there anything you think needs to be done by tech SEOs on a site level? Like, I don't know, editing internal links or...
I was about to say the biggest thing is internal links, right? Is if you have a holidays to Spain, if you have 2 holidays to Spain page and one is linked to in your main nav and in 10 blog posts, but you set the other one as the canonical tag, Google's probably going to go, well, hey, I don't think this is the original version of this content. This page that's pointed to all over the website, this feels like the actual canonical version. And this is where you get into some interesting issues sometimes, where people have produced great content, but they've canonicalized the wrong URL. And then Google ends up using the URL that is poorly linked to, and then goes, oh, well, this isn't a great page, and then ranks it poorly. I've just spotted somebody in the chat asking how you set up a canonical tag, and Natty, I'm going to throw it to you. I believe they're just on by default in Wix.
So that's very CMS dependent, of course. In Wix, we have all URLs are canonicalized by default, so you don't have the duplication going on. But had you decided to edit it yourself for any reason, you can use the SEO panel to edit the canonical tag, our default, and override it. But out of the box, you shouldn't have any duplication issues unless you do it yourself. If you copy an article over more than once, or even if you, for example, have a blog and you have a couple of posts and you use all the categories you have and you tag them in all the posts. Basically what you'll be creating, and that's your fault, not ours, is a lot of different tag pages or category pages, but with the same content, right? Same posts. So it's down to user error at this point, and you can override our setting. But I think most CMSs out there at this point, the ones that do care about SEO, not only canonicalize their URLs, well, hopefully, I hope so, they also give the ability to edit it. And if they don't, they should.
Cool. Let's move on then to our next slide, which is 404 errors and broken links. So, Natty, I guess first off, where would you see a 404 error? Where would you see broken links? How and why is this an issue?
Okay, so there are, again, a few ways to detect 404 errors. One is using the app, the deep call, full offering of tools or other callers to detect this. They'll just go over the links they find, and if something is broken, they'll alert to it. The other one is, of course, Google Search Console. And I'll surprise you by also adding Google Analytics if you actually have it configured, because then you can filter pages by the 404 title. You can see all the URLs that have triggered the 404. And that applies to most CMSs. That's a cool trick. You can use Google Analytics if you had it to detect 404s. So 404s are caused by there are two types of root causes. One is user error, of course. I've created a page, I've linked to another page on my website, and I didn't link very well. Or I've linked to another page on my website, but I have later down the road changed the URL for that website. All right? External causes are that someone linked, I have a backlink to my website, but that backlink is broken because they didn't parse it well, or because I, again, have changed the URL structure or the slug and didn't do anything about it. So there are internal and external causes to that. I do want to stress, not every 404 error is a big issue you should be taking care of right away. Because as you know, Chris, the larger website, especially eco website, right? They tend to accumulate 404s over time.
Yeah.
Sometimes not by their own doing. So imagine I'm a website, right? I have Google Search Console, I ran a crawl with an external tool, with a third-party tool, and I see a lot of 404s. I don't have all the time in the world. SEO is about doing 200 different things at once, right? So how would you go about prioritizing 404s? And when are there something an SEO should be able to live with?
So I would say the biggest time to worry about 404 errors or a page returning a 404 or a link being broken effectively is if you're in the situation where effectively one of your big pages, one of your big traffic drivers, or one of your big conversion pages potentially breaks somehow. Now, this could be, again, down to somebody deciding a URL needs to be changed for whatever reason, or links to that URL being suddenly breaking. Obviously, I would always say that internal links within your site should always return a 200 status eventually, whether they go through a redirect or not, which I think we'll get onto redirects in a little bit. But yeah, effectively, obviously, again, as a user, if I'm clicking around a navigation on a website or something similar, and I suddenly find that a page is broken when I click on a link, it's a nightmare. It's an awful user experience. I don't get anywhere. And crucially, more importantly, I then, as a website, I don't get to rank for whatever is on that page, right? So quite often what we will see is we prioritize essentially 404s that we find a lot of effectively. Again, 404s it's very, very easy. Obviously, if you have a header nav across 200 pages on your website and you make a single typo in your header nav, you suddenly break 200 links. So we will always flag things like this. And again, obviously, quite often I'm working on sites with millions of URLs, and these can create millions of 404s, which can be changed in a, opening up the CMS, pressing delete and adding the S on the end, or whatever the change is. So I would always recommend starting there and say ensuring that your header navigation and things like that all work perfectly. Then your big content pieces, and go from there. How to deal with these issues, as I say, quite often you've got a couple of options there. The best issue and the best way to fix it, and the easiest way to fix it, is to fix the link, right? If it's an internal link. But the big problem sometimes is that you might find that you have a link from, and this happens all the time, from a great, you might have a great backlink, right? So you might have got some national press or some international press. But you will find that, but you might find that despite you sending them the link that you want them to use, they've just got it wrong. Now they're not responding to your emails, etc., etc., etc. So what can you do? So obviously the perfect thing to do is to go into your CMS, go into Wix or whatever, and change the link. So it's now the right link that points to the right URL. But the other option are redirects, Nati, right? And I'm going to hand over to you for this, just because obviously I know you can talk about how to actually fix it within, or how to set up a redirect within Wix.
Yeah, so as we said, first of all, you fix the link, then you want to redirect, right? And you want to redirect things that, URLs that have had past signals. What do I mean by past signals? That there was actual content behind them, that there was something tangible, real behind them, and not just a systematic 404. So make sure you do prioritize that. About going about it in Wix, first of all, in many places, and we're extending that over time, whenever you change a URL slug, for example, or sometimes the URL structure that we're working on, we will automatically add a 301 redirect for you. We won't fix the links for you, but in many cases, we'll add it automatically and you can disable it yourself. If you want to add your own manual redirections, 301 redirections, you can go to the redirect manager under SEO settings, and you can, you have many options there. You can do it one by one, you can do it by groups, you can upload the CSV, and that way you make Google understand, you make Google pass the signals, pass everything basically Google knew about regarding the old URL to the new one. There's of course one major caveat here, is that you can't just redirect anywhere you want. You should always redirect to the same or matching content, meaning that just redirecting 404 to your homepage isn't going to help much. Just redirecting it to another URL, another page that's important for you, isn't going to help for long. You want to always redirect to the best and closest match possible. Content-wise, of course, right? Not URL structure-wise. It doesn't matter what the URL is, it's about the content behind it. So always make sure you redirect to the right URL, and also always make sure that that URL you're redirecting to is the canonical version and that it returns 200 OK, the one we've mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Guys, I have a question, maybe a dummy question here, but I'm getting like a lot of insights here, which is really, really good. But I have two questions. One is, how do I actually edit the URL? And the second question related to that is, because you mentioned like a human error where maybe you forgot like an S and then that crashed the whole thing. But is there an easy way for us to troubleshoot and find the source of the 404 issue?
So I can take the second bit in terms of finding the source. So again, any web crawler that you might use will always highlight a 404 error. Search Console also contains a list of 404s that Google has found, which is obviously a great resource. But also, I mean, again, a little bit of manual, UX, I guess, and testing of your site will help you find anything, right? Again, before you push a new navigation live, make sure all the links in it work effectively. That will be always be my my choices. Whenever you push content live, make sure those links work. Go and check yourself. But also, you've got, as I say, Search Console. You've got any web crawler you choose to use, and they would be my first two options. Natty, I'm going to pass fixing the link or actually editing a link over to you, because again, it feels like a Wix question.
So in Wix, there are a couple of places where you can do that. You can do it in the SEO panel, where you can edit the slug for the type of page you're working on in most cases. And you can do it to a greater extent in our SEO patterns. You can actually change the entire structure for your blog posts or your product pages, and we're extending that as well to other page types. So you can do it as a whole, for example, all of your blog posts. If you wanted to start with banana, you could, and end with someone take my husky out for a walk, please, then you could. And if you just wanted to edit the specific slug for a specific page, blog post, product, whatever, you can do that as well.
Yeah. So next, let's jump into something a little bit more, I guess, what am I going to say? Relatable, I suppose, to a standard user. So as we mentioned before, Google is a robot that does go off and just pull back the code that builds out your website. But nowadays as well, Google does what we call render a page. So it will actually generate an image somewhere, and it will analyze the image of the above the fold, as we call it. So the above the fold refers to whatever is visible when your website first loads. So effectively, that is on your desktop. Obviously, that is the widescreen rectangle of what you're looking at. The fold is an old journalism term. That's right. It's where the newspaper used to physically fold. The important information was above it, right? And for whatever reason, we've taken that and we've just carried that through into SEO. So Google just looks at the initial viewport, the top content of the page, and nowadays it's fascinating. Google will do things like check out the size of text on a page. So you have your headings, so your H tags, H1, 2, 3, etc. But Google will look at text that is bolded on a page, text that is large on a page, text that takes up the majority of the initial viewport, and will say, hey, this content is important to this page, right? Again, in the old days, I talk about the old days a lot. People would do things like make their headings really small and hide them in content. This is, I mean, as well as being awful for accessibility, like really bad for accessibility. It wasn't great for bots. I've just spotted somebody asking if the text needs to be live text. So will it read an image? Always make text live. Google can read images, but if you want that content to be reliably seen by Google, I would always say to make that actual text, right? But yeah, so back in the old days, Google would be able to, or people would be able to hide stuff effectively by making H2 small and things like that. We can't get away with that nowadays. And so what we need to do is, as well as the page needs to be, as well as the page needs to be human readable and accessible, it also needs to be accessible for bots, right, Natty? Like nowadays, we should just try and treat Google like most of the humans that use a website.
So definitely, I think we need to lay some grounds for some basics for how Google works again and how Google behaves before we delve into that. So for everyone not aware, we have discussed that Google fetches HTML, right? And Chris did mention that Google runs JavaScript and renders a page. Rendering a page is about basically taking all these building blocks. The building blocks are the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript, and using this as a piece of like Legos and instructions, and basically building the page. Okay, now in the past, all we cared about is what HTML Google sees. Now tech SEOs should care about what Google actually sees. It's not just the HTML, it's how it's constructed, how it's put together. And what Google's trying to do is figure out, okay, what's the most important piece of content on a page? And when we understand that when Google looks at a web page, by the way, something you should know about how bots behave, and then I'll continue about how Google views a web page. A few things you should be aware. First of all, Google is mobile first, right? What does being mobile first mean? Being mobile first means that the primary version Google theoretically should crawl is the mobile one. Why? Because most searches, most of our interactions on the web are done on mobile. So whenever we look at a page, we should, most of the time, we should look at it and design it according to mobile first best practices. How would it look like when viewed on mobile? And that's where the fold most come into play, because think about it, it's a prime real estate and you don't have much space on mobile devices, right? You have the fold. We're not saying Google only sees the fold, right? Because when Google fetches a web page and renders it, it actually opens a very, very large or tall viewport, right? Because Google doesn't scroll, Google doesn't click anything, Googlebot doesn't interact with anything. All it does is open a large viewport, and whatever is in that space in the fold is considered, or is maybe gets an extra value out of being there. So whenever you're looking as a tech SEO at a website, bring it up on mobile. It's best if you actually do it using one of Google's tools, like the friendly website mobile friendliness test, or the rich result test, or fetching it using inspect URL in Google Search Console, and inspect whatever's in the fold. If you have something pushing down the main content, and when I'm talking about the main content, I'm talking at least about the main heading of a page, then you should look into that, because what you're signaling to Google and to your users is, look, this pretty image is what I care about. But whenever someone hits a page and goes to a page, the user and the bot, the first thing they should know is, this is what I'm going to be reading about. This is the product I'm going to be viewing. This is the content being served to me. Yeah. So whenever you're thinking layout, think about how it would be displayed on mobile. I think that's the best advice I can give when it comes to that.
And just to lead on from that, Nati, a thing that we see a lot, and a thing that that people don't do enough. We all have a real habit, right? Of we do our work on our laptops, usually plugged into, plugged into a Wi-Fi, plugged into a router, or on our home Wi-Fi, which is great. And we build our websites and we go, yeah, that looks amazing. But then what we don't do is we don't go outside and pick up our phone and actually see what happens, right? Like my phone is a very middle range Android phone. It's like a £200 phone. If your website struggles to work on my phone while I'm waiting at the bus stop, then I'm not going to use that site. You know what I mean? Especially again, if you run a bus timetable website and your website doesn't work on my mobile phone at the bus stop, I'm not going to use your site. You know, so a big thing is to know who your users are, and again, we were talking about Google Analytics earlier on. Look at what browser they're using and what devices they're using, and ensure your site works for those users and those browsers. Should we move on then to something a little bit more content based, Nati, and discuss schema markup? So schema markup is basically, schema markup powers everything that's on a Google search result that's not an old-fashioned blue link, right? So again, my favorite is always recipes when it comes to schema markup. If anyone else is like me, when I'm looking for a recipe to make, I do most of my searching with my eyes. But also, again, like we said, I have a 2-year-old or nearly 2-year-old. I'm also really interested in things that I can cook in 10 minutes. So review schema is a great way of taking your really good recipe and saying, this is what it looks like. It looks amazing. 300 people have said that it's great. 300 people have rated it 5 stars. And also it takes 15 minutes and here are the ingredients. And that's all based on schema markup. So schema markup is a way of organizing the content, basically. So while Google does its best to understand the content that's on a page, schema markup is basically a way of you using it's almost like you filling in a form, right, for a website. Google says, what are the ingredients? And then it gives you a box to write in the ingredients. And Google goes, thanks very much. What does it look like? And then you give it a picture. And Google goes, thanks very much. We've got the picture now. I understand that. What are the ratings? And you can say, well, this person said it was 4 out of 5. This person said it was 4.5 out of 5. And Google goes, great. Now we know all that information. We can build out what we call rich snippets, which are these nice looking snippets, which can, in the best situations, they can entice people in. So again, looking at the recipe ones there, straight away now, if I'm looking at that, I'm going to go for the one on the right because they're the best chewy chocolate chip cookies and they look like it. So I'm going to click on that one. What other examples, I guess, Nasi, are, I mean, I was going to say, what's your favorite schema markup? I know not everyone's as weird as me.
I don't think I have a favorite one, weirdo. But I think people first need to understand that schema markup is just another layer, right, of your content. Schema markup is about structuring your content in a way that would be best suited for machines, okay? Why do we do it? Why do we want to do it? First of all, we do it because it offers enhanced, aka rich results in search engine result pages. But it also helps search engines and software understand what's on a page better because it's structured. We say, hey, look, this is the price, this is the image, this is the SKU for the product, and all the data is neatly structured for a non-human. So first of all, I think every structured data that helps other machines understand what's on my website is beautiful. However, I think a lot of people get sucked into the structured data game, the markup game, and try to mark up everything on their website, right? And that's a bit odd. That's like going to your kitchen and putting a label on everything. Like this is a fork, this is a spoon, this is a knife. Like Google would know that's a knife and that's a spoon. So what I'm saying is structured data markup is great, but I would advise everyone to stick to whatever produces rich results on Google. And you don't have to remember by heart what does and what doesn't. You can go on Google and search for Google Search Gallery. Whenever you do that, the URL will be brought up and you can see like a catalog of all the different rich results that Google offers. So products are of course a must. And for events, you get a neat rich result. Recipes, definitely, I have my own recipe website and rich results have been like amazing because they offer increased metrics, better performance on search results. They make you stand out and they make you more helpful to the user. So I would focus on anything that can bring a search result, a rich result. However, in Wix, I wouldn't go overboard because most of these are already generated by default. So I wouldn't advise Wix users to go overboard. You can do that in our SEO panels and in our SEO patterns, you can set for an entire page type. I just want to stress, structured data, those rich results are only applicable when you rank high on Google. Meaning that if you're on second, third page on Google, don't bother, don't waste your time. Which brings me to my next point about being a tech SEO and approaching tech SEO and your website health. You're going, when using software, when using Google Search Console, when detecting issues, you should always prioritize, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right. So if we jump onto the next slide, oh, sorry, I've had the wrong slide there open. So we're getting onto prioritization in a second there, Nasi. But I guess what you're talking about leads on to kind of auditing websites, which we discussed earlier. So effectively, yeah, we have. So we've talked about all these different issues, but how do you actually go about finding them? How do you go about then fixing them? So obviously we've mentioned Google Search Console a few times. Google Search Console is again, whether your site is a tiny one-person operation or whether you are some of the biggest websites on earth, Google Search Console is a great source of information for all sorts of problems. I use it for all of our clients pretty much every single day. Search Console is a great tool. Third-party auditing tools as well. I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of DeepCrawl. I was before I worked here, but there are other tools out there. We've mentioned Screaming Frog a couple of times. Screaming Frog is a great tool to help you find problems. So Screaming Frog operates like as closely as possible to Googlebot effectively, and will go through your site and find as many pages as it can, and then give you a load of great reporting on the issues, on any issues that you might find they might be able to find on the site. Once you've done that, and we were talking about prioritization earlier, you need to begin prioritizing those issues, which we'll get onto in a second. A very important thing to do is to schedule and have a regularity to these audits. Now, regular doesn't necessarily mean often. It doesn't necessarily mean daily or 3 times a week or whatever like that. If your site is for a lot of sites, weekly or maybe monthly is the kind of cadence you might be looking for. Again, what we do for a lot of big clients is they will have one big check of the site monthly or bi-monthly, and then smaller sort of what we would call tactical crawls and audits more weekly. And then also the last point is, and this is kind of what Nasi was talking about before, is not to waste time on SEO myths or not to waste time on rabbit holes that don't necessarily lead anywhere, right? It's very easy to get caught up on weird issues or small issues that don't necessarily provide much impact, and ignore a page over here that's not being indexed anymore, or a load of broken links or something like that. So it's worth always focusing on that stuff. And again, always try and avoid hearsay on Twitter or whatever about what the new definite big ranking factor is, because again, I'm sure Natty and I have both seen a lot of them over the years that have turned out to be not an awful lot, that haven't been a lot, but someone's done a study, right, a really flawed study, and said that if your page is green, it ranks better. It's very easy to get lost down these rabbit holes. Is there anything else on that, Natty? I'm just looking at time, or do you want to jump straight into how to prioritize?
I think we could jump to how to prioritize. I know that people have been, I'm saying we don't know the tools too well to actually make the connection. What are you talking about? So people all over the chat, please understand we don't have time to show the tools. We do have a previous webinar that explains about all the tools with our amazing data. We will, however, when we can, share links to articles explaining how to use the relevant Wix tools and when. So don't worry about that. I'll make sure that happens. Right now, you need to take away a way of thinking, a way of looking at a website through the eyes of a non-human, a software, a bot, and that's what we're trying to impart here. So after you will get down the line all the links explaining how to do all of these things and additional explanations. And that's that. I think we can go to prioritization. But before prioritizing, it doesn't matter if that's a DeepRoll app or anything else. You mentioned a website audit, and a website audit is it's just an inspection, right? Like an auto inspection. You bring your car in and they tell you everything that's wrong, right? So technical SEO is about finding what's gone wrong and what's you expect to be there, but isn't there. So before prioritizing, how would you go about scheduling these audits? I mean, I've decided on the software I'd like to use. Okay, I've connected Google My Search Console. I've decided to use DeepCall or Screaming Frog or whatever other tool I've heard of. Should I do it every day? Should I do it every week? How much time are users, are people here supposed to invest in technical SEO?
Quite often, I would say that it can vary enormously on the size of the site and how much content you're putting out. I think for the vast majority of sites, a monthly audit and health check is more than enough. Again, most tools, so DeepCrawl has automated crawling of the site, and DeepCrawl will the DeepCrawl app within Wix will crawl your site weekly. But also most tools, again, Screaming Frog, you can set schedules within Screaming Frog as well. Although do remember that means that your computer with Screaming Frog on does need to be turned on at the time. I'd maybe recommend making sure that's on a Monday morning while your computer is on, or leave your computer on for a couple of hours on a Friday evening, something like that, in order to get the data. But yeah, I would say for the majority of sites, monthly, but weekly is a great way to absolutely surefire make sure that you find anything basically as soon as it happens, right?
Hopefully. Eventually everything breaks, right?
Exactly,
So,
yeah. And sometimes it breaks and you don't know why. So
okay, so let's discuss a bit about prioritization, because I feel this is the most important aspect of doing SEO work, not just technical SEO. So lay it on me. What's the first thing? There are plenty of issues. I go to Search Console. I see a lot of errors and statuses and notices Google is throwing at me, and DeepCall is throwing stuff at me, and it's overwhelming. I don't understand half of it. What should I target first? Where should I invest my limited time in resolving?
Yeah. Biggest thing is always content. Any issues that make content non-indexable, right? So any situation where you have a page on the site that Google is not going to be able to see, that's issue number one. I would always rather Google see a page with issues than not see a perfect page, or a page that's perfect otherwise, you know. So internal linking is always going to be a thing that we're going to look at straight away. If you've got links to big pages that are broken, you're going to want to focus on those. After that, I would begin
I want to take you back a second. Sorry for stopping you.
It's okay.
What does that mean that a page is or isn't indexable?
No problem. So a page that's not indexable is a page that basically cannot be put into the index by Google. There are tags within a page that you can use to set this. What I would say is the vast majority of, again, e-com and things like that, e-com websites, you will want the majority of pages indexed, and kind of your indexing or not indexing strategy is a bigger topic, I would say, for a lot of this. But on the whole, yeah. So a page that is not findable or able to be put into the index by Google is a page that we would consider to be not indexable. Whereas a page can be indexed and no longer findable by Google should links be removed or things like that.
So there are a lot of, again, it depends, like in everything in SEO, and that's the biggest lesson here, people. Everything depends in SEO. If I don't know anything about indexing, but I do want to go about finding issues, what are things that usually make Google not want to index something? Meaning that I haven't instructed Google to not index anything. If we think about the index as a big library, and each website is a book, and each page on that website is, guess, a page on a book. And I haven't told Google, look, ignore this chapter, don't index it. But still, Google hasn't, right? I can see some of my posts aren't being indexed. Google Search Console told me, like, this is not a part of my offering in my library, is Google. What should I look out for, even if I'm not a technical person?
I would say, again, like you mentioned before, use your keyboard. Google your own website. Google the things that you're trying to rank for and see if you are there. Is always the biggest indicator. Also, again, I think there are, if you're not a technical person, you don't want to be looking for tags. I believe there's toggles and things like that within Wix to actually no index pages. Yeah, that would be the first place I'd start if obviously you're looking at a website that you own and a website that you have control of the CMS. I'm just looking at the time now, so we have a couple of minutes left. So we have a next slide here on how to keep a site healthy.
Yeah.
So obviously we've talked about automated and scheduled crawls before. Obviously we have apps and crawlers out there. A big thing for me is to always consider SEO with every single change that you make, and also to educate people who use your site. So whether that's your colleagues or if you have a situation where you're a consultant, things like that, try and teach everyone in the business about SEO, because again, from working in quite big companies, and obviously the bigger your company gets, the more points of failure there are in all aspects of SEO. The people are normally the biggest point of failure, right? Someone might decide one day, hey, I don't know why the URL for this page is this. I'm going to change it, and then not fix the links, or a number of different issues. Oh, I don't like that H1 tag. I'm going to change the header of this page, unbeknown to the fact that you've spent the last 6 months building links to that page and you've worked really hard to make sure that page is super optimized, blah, 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 blah. So I would say to always try and teach as many people as you possibly can within your business what SEO is, why it's important, and just to think about it with every change you make. And also, like we mentioned right back at the start, the great thing about technical SEO is you have documentation. It's the one bit of SEO that Google will actually lay it out and say, here's how you do it correctly, and even better, here's a tool that you can just test it with. Use those tools. Use that documentation to build things out to the letter, because it's the one part. It's why I stayed in technical SEO and moved away from traditional SEO. I like to be able to do a thing and then press a button and have a little pat on the head from somebody that says, yep, you've done it right, well done. So I would always focus on that stuff. What about yourself, Nasi? Kind of what are your tips for keeping a site healthy and in good shape?
Prioritization, of course. I think for most websites, a monthly crawl is great. But I think it's important not just to audit a website, meaning to run a program or a SaaS service or some sort of software. It's also about tracking the number and types of errors over time. You want to see that your website health is trending up, right? You don't want to see an increase in errors. You want to see a decrease in errors. So one of the things I would constantly monitor is, like, last month I had this and this and these issues. Have some of them increased, gotten worse, or have they improved? If I notice a trend, for example, I have an increase in 404s. Maybe there is a wider issue that I haven't solved at the core yet. So always look at the trends and compare what the services, the tools surface to you. So I know the DeepCrawl app does that, and you can compare. There are trend lines there that you can see. I know that Google Search Console in many reports also offers trend lines for various things. I would say that the most important tool, I beg DeepCrawl's forgiveness, the most important tools in Google, in the tech SEO's arsenal is Google Search Console. You can do that, by the way, in a couple of clicks using our Connect to Google feature in the Wiz. Always go there, always see what's stopping your website from reaching the full potential. Now, no one is going to teach you to be a tech SEO in an hour. You know what? They're not going to even teach you to be a tech SEO in a month. Experience, time, and a lot of research goes into that. The important thing is to check, to encounter issues, to do a Google search, or ask for advice in supporting communities, in Twitter, on Facebook groups, and then resolve it. What we try to do on our end is try for you to not have to take care of that at all. But it's always important to check in once in a while, just like you have your car tested and licensed every year so it doesn't break down while you drive. That's the same thing here. You don't want something silly on your website impacting your business or your client's business. And that's what tech SEO is all about. It's what could I or someone else screw up, and how do I fix that? And it's not something you'll get right into right away. You have to keep at it. But the first step is connecting your Google Search Console, diving into the data, wait a couple of days for the data to populate, dive into the data, understand what's Google pushing back at you, meaning if Google is surfacing it, I guess it's important. And one last tip, a lot of people have been noticing around the web. I manage a lot of large SEO communities, and a lot of people have been noticing there's an increase in crawled but not indexed in Google Search Console. I'm sure you've encountered it on many websites, forums, discussions. So that's a great example of how sometimes it's not your fault. Remember, Google is a third party. They have bugs, they have preferences, they have limited resources, even if it's Google. It's not always your fault, but when it is, you better take care of that.
Awesome. Nati, Chris, I want to thank you both for the time. This 1 hour was insane. A lot of really good insights. We had over 250 questions asked in the Q&A. Plus, I can easily say 200,000 chat comments here. So it was really, really good to see all this movement and everyone really, really excited to hear from you both. As you said, it's not going to be something you learn overnight. It's not going to be something that's easy to just stop and do it. And okay, now I know tech SEO. It takes time. It takes, the energy to go through things. And again, DeepCrawl, having Wix SEO with all the features we released recently helps a lot. It helps a ton. So guys, if you have additional questions, I know we couldn't go through this because 250 questions would be here like for 5 days and not be able to answer all of them. So feel free to ask us questions. If you are like part of any of the communities we own, like EditorX community or Wix Partners community, all things Wix, join it, keep asking the questions there. If you want to go on Twitter, make sure you tag us, like use like the hashtag tech SEO, Wix SEO, Wix, DeepCrawl. Go for it, go crazy, ask questions there. I'll try and convince the guys to maybe spend some time there to get the questions answered on Twitter as well. But above all, I want to be respectful of your time. We dedicated 1 hour here. So again, thank you so much, guys. Kermit says hi as well. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Chris, Nati, thanks for all of the time. And everyone in the back end here who is like not showing their faces, but it's a lot of people behind the scenes to make this happen. So thank you, everyone, guys. Thanks for everything. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. SEO rocks.
Thanks, folks.
Bye, people.